Hi, and welcome to JD's Longbox. I'm your host, JD. For this 60-second review, we're going to look all the way back to the very first comic that I ever owned. It was so long ago that I didn't even know that it was a comic book. I can remember sitting at the foot of my parents' bed while my mom read this to me, and I just assumed that it was a children's picture book. It was only recently that I came back in touch with this book, and when I realized that this was a comic book format, I knew I had to do a review. For this episode, we're taking a look at The True Story of Smokey Bear. Smokey Bear was created in 1944 by the United States Forestry Service and remains the longest-running ad campaign and public service announcement in the history of the United States. This comic was produced by the U.S. Forestry Service, a part of the USDA, and sponsored by the Advertising Council. The first editions were printed by Western Publishing Company around 1960, with reprints every few years after that through the 1970s. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information about the writer or the artist. That's really too bad because, as you'll see, the creative team on this book really put out some fantastic work. The story starts in 1950 with the Captain Mountain Fire in New Mexico. The forest rangers valiantly fight the raging inferno and are almost overcome by a firestorm. As the smoke clears, they find a bear cub burned and clinging to a tree. For his bravery, they named the little bear Smokey. It's a bit misleading because I'm sure most people believe that the symbol of forest fire prevention was named after this little bear cub. But in fact, the bear cub was named after the Forestry Service's mascot. The story gives the basic origin of a beloved American icon, along with the not-so-subtle reminder that matches, cigarettes, and unattended campfires can lead to the ruination of thousands of acres of forest. The story is told through narration with almost no dialogue. I found the prose to be a little dense for children, and even I stumbled over some of the longer words. But considering that this was written in the 1950s, it's possible that with fewer distractions, the intended audience was much better read than today's youngsters. The artwork is some of the most realistic illustrations I've seen in a comic book, and that makes it a real shame that I can't give credit to the artists. I remember believing that every animal, ranger, and soldier were real. The shovels, the pickaxes, even the bulldozers and trucks were perfectly rendered. The pages are laid out in simple square panels that read from left to right, top to bottom, since this was intended for early readers and moms and dads who may have never touched a comic book before reading this to their children. Thanks, Mom! The writing gets an 8. Colors gets an 8.5. The inks gets a 9. And the pencils get a 9.5. This adds up to an 88%. If you want to read this comic for yourself, you don't have to look far. These were printed by the millions and handed out to schools by the Forestry Service and Smokey Bear himself. While many copies are old and printed on pulp, there are several sites that are selling them for a little more than $1. But you can even view the comic for free as a PDF from the West Virginia Forestry Service. I've provided a link in the description. After you've had a chance to read this comic for yourself, leave a comment about your thoughts or share your memories of Smokey Bear. Until next time, I'm JD, and this box is closed.